Warning! Warning! Something has happened to Quinntopia. Find out why and what happened to Quinntopia in this video, starting now. Well, hello everyone. This is a Quinntopia update, and as you can tell, the infamous train room has changed quite a bit. This is mostly what's left of the original structure. Everything else is in boxes, all nicely packed away and safe. But what's the story? What happened to Quinntopia? Where did we go? So this is going to be my update for, I guess, 2014/2015, and I'll talk about what's going on and what my plans are, and give you an update because a couple of people have asked for it, and I've certainly got enough subscribers that are probably going, what happened to Quinntopia? So let's talk about that. So yes, it's true. The layout has come down. It has been disassembled, removed, hauled away. At least those parts that couldn't be salvaged. But usually one of the first things people are concerned about or ask me about is, well, what'd you do with all your buildings? Well, fear not, they're all saved. They're all packed away in boxes, and they're in good shape and ready to be used for my next layout project. But for now, it's time I moved on to a new one, and there's actually some really good reasons why this layout had really reached its fullness of its career with me. And the main reason was that a lot of things about it I wasn't happy with. To be clear, there were some things I really thought were fantastic and cool, and I learned a lot and was really pleased with how it turned out. But there were a lot of things that bugged me. And I talked about this on my blog, quinntopia.blogspot.com. But I'll go ahead and take you through them in this video, hopefully for the sake and purpose of helping other people not repeat my mistakes, or at least be aware of what I did that I did enjoy, so you can factor that into your plans for your layout plan in the future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and we'll go through 5 mistakes I made with the Quinntopia layout, or at least 5 things I didn't like that ultimately led to or were major factors in my decision to get rid of it. And I'll talk to you at the end of this about some other things I'm working on, just to let you know what's happening in Quinntopia world. So let's go with the top 5 Quinntopia mistakes. Number 5 is the tram line. So the tram line was created with Tomic's track. Tomic's had a line of, this was before their current tram line track was released, but they have a line of very short radius track that's designed for trolley lines. It had some plastic inserts that you could put on top of it so that it would look like rails submerged in the street, but I decided not to use that. And I decided to use these giant sheets of plastic that's actually created for signs. And I talk about this material a lot. It's called Sintra here in the US. It's used for signs. It's kind of this extruded PVC foam material that's about 1/4 inch thick. I love it for modeling purposes. Anyway, my approach was to carve or cut the lines for the track into this and to use that as my streets and have the rails sit below it, sit in it. It looked great. It was a lot of work to put together, but ultimately, because of the effort it takes to keep trolley track or tram track clean, and the difficulty of accessing the tram track, given that there's buildings and lights and cars, it was just a huge hassle, and the tram track just never really lived up to my expectations and never really made me happy. It was just really a lot of work all the time. So it was one of the things that was more of a frustration than ultimately something that brought me a lot of happiness. Number 4, the track unplanned. Well, what this means is that if you know anything about how I created the layout, it basically started off as a single hollow core door. I added another one on one end. And then I added another big extension that really went all around my garage, and I'll talk about that later. But it got bigger and bigger, but it sort of got bigger in concentric outward circles. And so the train lines in the center got constrained, and the big one that went around everything was nice and long, but it was really boxing in everything else. And the metaphor I'll use is that it's like Tron's light cycles. If you're familiar with the video game or the movie, it's where you try to stay on the outside, otherwise you get trapped in the middle and you got nowhere to go. So it's very limiting, and I felt like it really limited the track plan, and it wasn't really, like I said, there was no plan really. It was just sort of a bunch of additions, which ultimately led to an opportunity to get rid of it because I didn't like it. That's one way of putting it. Number 3, too many switches. Now, in reality, I would have a lot more switches, but the truth of it is, on this planet, with the way that electricity is conducted through the rails, switches are just a total pain. They had to be cleaned. Not all of them always worked. And I had a mix of Kato Unitrack switches, which are great. I love them. And some Minitrix turnouts as well, which were fine too. It's not the product. It's just the small scale and the technology makes them just always problematic. My next layout will have switches, just far fewer. I just have to figure out a way how to make a layout with fewer switches. Number 2, wiring. I don't like wiring a whole lot. It's kind of cool to be able to do it, to get something to work remotely through the power of electricity, but there was just too many wires, and it would become and I'm no good at it. So I had this giant spaghetti of wires that went to my control panel. It just looked unsightly. I felt like it was sloppy. I felt like it was distracting me from enjoying my layout. So I need to figure out a new way, and maybe just take more time and have a better plan for wiring for my next layout. So there's a tip for you. Take your time and plan carefully how you wire things, and try to do it in such a way so that it stays neat and clean and manageable. I think that's the best advice. And now on to number 1, too tight. Things had just gotten too tight in Quinntopia. And again, the best way to explain that is the layout was set up originally as a small single door layout. I added on all these extensions, but I created this environment where I was now surrounded on all sides, it felt like, by layout or walls or workbenches, and it just felt very restrictive and confining, and I wouldn't say claustrophobic, but it just didn't have a sense of openness. I know a lot of people with train layouts struggle with it because space to move and space for trains are always going to be in conflict, and unless you're exceedingly wealthy or fortunate, it's always going to be a challenge. I'm going to have to make a choice next time, and part of my rules for my next layout is don't overbuild. Make it smaller. Make sure you have plenty of room so it's comfortable just to be near the layout and watch trains and not feel too constricted. So that's the number 1 reason. That's my top 5. And hopefully there was something there that everybody could say, oh yeah, that's interesting. I'm not going to repeat that mistake, but it sort of should provide a little bit of understanding now why the layout for me at least was a learning experience. And using that learning now, I'm going to move forward and try some other things. There is some good news, and there are some other projects that sit on my workbench waiting for attention and for some effort to be applied. Number 1 is something I've just sort of finished up recently, which is a refinery project. This is actually parts and bits and different little small structures that were not really together on my old layout, and I decided to put them together, add lots of lights, and see what it looked like, and combine it into one holistic piece rather than a bunch of fragmented pieces. So it's almost done. It's down to details now. It's kind of a fun little project. Another thing I've been doing is I've found some 1 to 200 scale, I believe they're 1 to 200 scale, wargaming miniatures of futuristic tanks, armor, whatever you want to call it. And they're really cool, creative designs, a lot of fun, relatively inexpensive compared to trains. And I've been playing around with them. I have a couple already for Earth Defense Organization, as you may know from some of my older videos. If you haven't seen my Earth Defense Organization video, you should check it out. It's probably one of the ones I'm most proud of. So I got some tanks I'll be painting up in something close to N scale that can be integrated with a future N scale layout project. Maybe some post-apocalyptic N-gauge scenario. And then there's a diorama I've been working on for about, well, over a year. I actually thought I would get it done Christmas of 2013, and here it is Christmas of 2014, and it's really not made a lot of progress, except in the past week or so I've actually gotten back to it, making some progress, fixing some things from last year, and hopefully I can get it done this year and have something to show for my efforts. Another fun project that I'm haven't spent a lot of time on in the past year, but will be posting and sharing more about it, is the EH200 project. This is actually one part, a very interesting part of a bigger idea I have to create my own, I guess they call them freelanced railroad lines. And I'm kind of excited to actually show you what I'm doing here because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, I digitized a Kato EH200. I think I have enough photos, but I don't really remember what I did to create a video tutorial of how I did it. So not sure if you'll hear much about that until you see the finished project. And I've also done some digitization of a Kato subway car system, which I hope to make a part of my plan for my next layout. What will my next layout be? Well, let's talk about that too. So the next layout I imagine to be far more urban, multi-track main line. So I'm thinking probably either two sets of double track or one set of triple track. And that way I can keep trains operating and have a decent terminal without having a lot of switches and storage space having to be on the layout. I'm still not sure how I'll address that, but that's the idea. I'd like to have an elevated subway line, get a little bit of that Tokyo feel and look to the layout. I think it would be fascinating to see an elevated subway line go through some of my buildings and skyscrapers. That would be cool. And that's kind of about as much of a vision as I have. It won't be as big as the old Quinntopia, but I intend to make it far more, or at least as interesting, even if it's in a smaller space. So that's the plan. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all your comments and encouragement. And I'm still here. You're just not going to hear from me that much, but I wanted to give you an update. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thanks for watching.